Imagine an organ smaller than your fist, preparing to hold a growing baby. The uterus begins pregnancy relatively small. It is roughly the size and shape of a pear. But pregnancy changes that dramatically. Over several months, the uterus expands many times beyond its original size. So what makes this possible? The answer begins with the uterus itself. Its main body is made largely of smooth muscle. This muscle is called the myometrium. Unlike skeletal muscle, it works without conscious control. During pregnancy, its muscle cells become larger. They also increase their capacity to support a growing pregnancy. At the same time, the uterus receives a much greater blood supply. Its blood vessels adapt as pregnancy progresses. The uterine lining also changes. It becomes specialized for supporting the pregnancy. But the biggest transformation is physical. The uterus must create enough space for everything developing inside it. That includes the fetus, placenta, and amniotic fluid. At first, the pregnancy is microscopic. There was almost no visible change in the abdomen. But cellular growth is already accelerating. The embryo develops rapidly during the first weeks. The placenta begins developing alongside it. Soon, the uterus starts adapting to the increasing volume. Its muscle cells stretch. Then they grow larger. This process is called hypertrophy. It is one reason the uterus can expand so dramatically.
But stretching alone does not explain everything. The uterus also changes its shape. Early in pregnancy, it remains deep inside the pelvis. As it grows, it gradually rises into the abdominal cavity. This creates additional room. The surrounding organs also experience changing pressure. The bladder may have less available space. The intestines can shift as the uterus grows. The stomach can eventually be affected too. So the growing uterus changes the neighborhood around it. But why does the uterus need to become so large? Because the developing baby needs increasing space. The placenta needs space too. Amniotic fluid also occupies part of the growing environment. And the uterus must accommodate all three. Think of the uterus as a flexible biological room. Early on, that room is compact. Later, its walls have expanded enormously. Yet the uterus remains muscular throughout the process. That muscle has another important job. It must eventually contract during labor. So the uterus needs both flexibility and strength. How can one organ do both? Its muscle architecture makes that possible. During pregnancy, smooth muscle cells become considerably larger. Hormones help regulate these changes. Estrogen and progesterone are especially important. They influence uterine growth and function. The placenta also becomes an important hormone-producing organ. It releases signals that help maintain pregnancy. One major hormone is progesterone. Progesterone helps keep the uterus relatively relaxed during pregnancy. That matters because constant, strong contractions would be dangerous for the pregnancy. Estrogen also contributes to uterine growth. It supports changes in the uterus and its blood vessels. Together, these hormonal signals help coordinate the transformation. But the uterus is not simply inflating. It is actively remodeling itself.
Its tissues reorganize as pregnancy progresses. Its blood vessels become larger and more numerous. This allows more blood to reach the placenta. The placenta then manages exchange between maternal and fetal circulation. Oxygen and nutrients can cross the exchange surface. Waste products can move in the opposite direction. The uterus therefore becomes much more metabolically active. Its blood flow increases dramatically during pregnancy. That increased circulation supports the growing pregnancy. The uterine wall also becomes more responsive to mechanical changes. As the uterus stretches, its muscle experiences increasing tension. This tension becomes important later in pregnancy. Near the end, the uterus is enormously expanded. Yet its muscle fibers remain organized. The cervix also changes during pregnancy. It helps keep the pregnancy inside the uterus. Later, it gradually prepares for labor. This is another remarkable transformation. The uterus is changing while still performing its original job. It is supporting pregnancy from implantation through birth. And it does this without being consciously controlled. No person has to tell the uterus to grow. Hormones and cellular signals coordinate the process automatically. The developing pregnancy also contributes signals. The placenta acts as a major communication center. It connects biological information between mother and fetus. This communication helps regulate the pregnancy environment. But there is another surprising fact. The uterus does not simply grow outward in one direction. Its shape changes as it expands. It begins as a small pelvic organ. Then it becomes increasingly rounded. Later, it becomes more elongated and enlarged. By late pregnancy, it occupies much of the abdominal cavity. The surrounding organs have less room than before. This explains many familiar pregnancy sensations. Pressure can increase. The bladder may feel crowded. Digestion can become uncomfortable. Breathing mechanics can also change later in pregnancy. All of these effects begin with one expanding organ. But eventually, the uterus must reverse the transformation. After birth, the uterus no longer needs to contain the pregnancy. Its job suddenly changes. The muscle begins contracting. These contractions help compress blood vessels inside the uterine wall. That helps reduce bleeding after delivery. The uterus then begins gradually shrinking. This process is called involution. Its muscle cells decrease in size. The uterus slowly returns toward its previous dimensions. The transformation that took months begins reversing. But it does not happen instantly. The uterus needs time to recover. This entire process reveals something remarkable about human biology. The uterus is not a rigid container. It is living tissue capable of extraordinary remodeling. It can expand, it can support, it can contract, and it can rebuild itself afterward. So why does the uterus expand so much during pregnancy? Because pregnancy is not simply about making a baby bigger. It is about building an entire temporary biological environment. The uterus creates the space for that environment. Its muscles adapt, its blood vessels adapt, its tissues adapt, its hormones change, its shape changes, and eventually, everything changes again. The uterus grows because the pregnancy demands a larger world. Then, when that world is no longer needed, the uterus begins shrinking. An organ that seems ordinary spends 9 months becoming extraordinary. And perhaps the strangest part is this. The uterus never needs conscious instructions to do it. Your body quietly rebuilds one of its organs around new life. The uterus grows because biology makes room for what comes next. Then biology guides it back again. A tiny organ becomes a temporary world, then quietly returns home. That is the extraordinary adaptability of the human uterus.